Hi, I can't think of a better place to talk about this than my 4-year-old daughter's bedroom. So, as a parent, I think I have a reasonable expectation that I make decisions on behalf of my children, that I decide where my children go to school, that my husband and I decide what language my children learn to speak, that we decide about our children's health care. We decide whether or not our children go to church. We decide what our children will learn about their history and culture and what language we will speak at home. Now imagine that we can't. So this was the terrible reality for Indigenous children all across the United States. From the early 1800s until 1969, the United States had Indian boarding schools. 1969, that is after the Summer of Love. That's a year after I was born. 1969. So children as young as 4 would be torn from their communities, from their families, and put in these residential homes where they would not be allowed to speak their own language, where they would get haircuts, where they couldn't speak to their siblings or people that they knew from their community. They were forced to go to church. And the whole idea was to take the Indian out of the Indian. So back in the days when the only good Indian was a dead Indian, thousands of children died in residential schools from abuse, disease, and mistreatment. My daughter goes to bed every night with this. A 4-year-old Indigenous child torn from his or her home would go to bed by themselves, bereft of family, of language, and community. And this is shocking. So with the upcoming review from the Supreme Court of the Indian Child Welfare Act, it is so important that people read a report that came out in May of this year from the Interior Department, and it is the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative Investigative Report. It's a long one, so if you can't read the whole thing due to circumstances, please read a synopsis. It talks about the 400 residential schools that operated in the United States and its territories from the early 1800s until 1969. Hundreds of children died, probably thousands, possibly tens of thousands. This is something everyone needs to be aware of. Rights are being taken away. We cannot let this happen again.